So for today's movie review, I'll be reviewing the movie Avengers, Age of Ultron, which is essentially the midpoint of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And is the movie better than the first Avengers, just as good, or just okay? The central plot to Avengers, Age of Ultron, basically the Avengers are battling Hydra, and Tony Stark comes to the conclusion that with S.H.I.E.L.D. not being a thing anymore, and with the Avengers not gonna be around all the time, with the threat of alien invasion, basically he and Bruce Banner try to create an artificial intelligence which will basically serve as a peacekeeping force for Earth. However, things don't go their way and the artificial intelligence gains a mind of its own, calling itself Ultron, and basically Ultron comes to the conclusion that in order to protect Earth, I have to kill all the humans, and which leads to all the Avengers fight against Ultron. Now, in terms of what I liked about the movie, I liked the essential character interactions between all the Avengers. Like, I thought they all had great chemistry and how well they played off one another. The performance of James Spader playing Ultron was great. I kind of like how much this movie felt more like a comic book movie than the first Avengers movie, whereas with the first Avengers movie, it definitely felt like a movie that had comic book parts to it, but it generally felt more like, oh, this was made for the audience. Whereas this one incorporated a lot more comic book elements to it, and some of the action sequences were pretty great, special effects was good. In terms of what I disliked about the movie, unlike the first Avengers movie, which was nicely paced and had some nicely well done edits, I felt this movie from time to time had some nicely paced scenes, while other parts of it felt rushed. And there's some stuff they added I didn't quite understand, like Thor going to the well. Like, I know it's a setup for one of the movies in Phase 3, but it felt like it was added for no reason or came out of nowhere. And the relationship between Hulk and Black Widow, again, came out of nowhere. It was just like, was that really needed? Ultron, I'll get to in a bit. As much as I liked him, there were some parts of I didn't like about him. And also the action near the end of the movie felt very underwhelming. Like, the action was pretty much going like this for most of the movie, but then by the time we got to the final battle, it was just kind of that just kind of ends. Like, I wanted it to be bigger. Like, they were trying to go big, but just didn't feel satisfying as a final battle. Now, as for the characters in Age of Ultron, there's a lot, but we're going to start with the main cast of characters, which is the Avengers, starting with Iron Man. He's really no different from the other times you've seen him, but there's a bit more layers to the reason why he creates Ultron, or tries to create Ultron in this case, because the events of the first Avengers movie still plague him, and it doesn't help that he gets a vision at the start of the movie where he sees that everyone's dead and the Chitauri are like heading towards Earth, and basically comes up with the idea of creating Ultron, and yeah, he's still funny as ever, but yeah, there's a bit more layers to Iron Man. As for Captain America, he's like no different from the first 3 times we've seen him. Okay, as for Thor, he's kind of like Captain America, where he's not really any different, but he seems to possess the knowledge of the Infinity Stones. That's really about it. Bruce Banner this time around is how I expected him to be, because in the first movie, he didn't feel like the Bruce Banner I would know in terms of like his overall character, because with the Bruce Banner that appeared in the Avengers movie, he was wearing nice suits and he was just kind of like, oh, kind of acted like the dad you would bring to work day. He's just kind of like, oh, is this what you do for a living? No, that's cool. This time around, in terms of both physical appearance and the way he acts, very much like the Bruce Banner I would expect. And as for Black Widow, we get to see a softer side of her, a more caring side, if you will. And we get a bit more of her backstory, because it's been teased between the first 3 movies she's appeared in, but we get a bit more of her background as to why she's the Black Widow, so that was pretty cool. Now, out of the Avengers, Hawkeye gets a lot of attention in this movie. When I mean a lot of attention, I mean he gets a lot of attention. Like, in the first Thor movie, it was basically a cameo. The Avengers, he was reduced to nothing but a thug for Loki. This time around, it's more like the Hawkeye I think most people are familiar with being like being an asshole. But then there's some parts of him that were kind of unexpected, like, oh, he has a wife and kids. I was just like, oh, I didn't see that coming, which was kind of cool. But there were some parts of the movie with him that I felt were okay, while other parts of the movie were trying to make him as relevant as possible for the lack of screen time he has gotten from the first movie appeared until now. But yeah, this is definitely the character I think most people were expecting from the first Avengers movie. Now, they introduced a lot of new characters in the movie, which brings along 3 different origin stories. From one of the characters being the main villain Ultron, to the twins, and finally the Vision. But I'm going to start with the main villain of the movie, which is Ultron. This version of Ultron is really interesting because my idea of what Ultron could be is something along the lines of, what if HAL 9000 had the body of a Terminator? That's how I would see Ultron. This version, this one's interesting because he actually has a personality. He's not just some cold, logical robot. He's basically an evil version of Tony Stark. That's the best way to describe him. And I do like this version of Ultron since he does have a personality. But I wish he did a bit more because we see him, fly, shoot laser beams. But I wish he had a bit more superpowers. And at one point, the movie does gain a vibranium body. And vibranium's really tough stuff to break or shouldn't really take damage. But his body during the final battle was just kind of fell apart. I was like, what? Although, to be fair, I feel like between him and Loki, I feel like he's the slightly better villain since he does put up a fight, unlike Loki, who basically, to be fair, was better in Avengers than he was in Thor, but Loki, let's face it, he got his ass handed to him. Whereas Ultron, he can hold his own, but then it's when he does get defeated, it's just more you defeated me, but my mind's gonna be in another body. So, in this case, I do like the character, but I wish they did a bit more with him. Now, as for the twins, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, we're going to talk about Quicksilver first, because this version of him, he seemed to be very headstrong at first, because he's basically delivering all the punches and stuff, but then he becomes very protective of his sister, and it kind of becomes just the third wheel, and he doesn't do much. He runs around fast and stuff, but again, I feel like between this Quicksilver and the Quicksilver that appears in Days of Future Past, I feel like the Days of Future Past version was the more interesting version, and Scarlet Witch is actually the more interesting twin, because at least she's got a bit more character to go off of. And she does a lot more stuff with her powers, mess with people's minds, create force fields, break things apart, or lift things. Geo is definitely the more interesting twin. Last but not least, the Vision. If I had to describe the Vision in this movie, he's kind of like the Hulk of the last movie, in the sense that he doesn't really appear much in the movie, but when he does, he's essentially the scene stealer. And he doesn't really use his phasing powers that much, but he's a cool character nonetheless. So, for my final verdict of Avengers Age of Ultron, in general, I did enjoy it a lot, in terms of, what characters they brought in terms of what direction they're going in, but I felt the movie wasn't as well paced as the first movie, from a combination of the pacing itself to the edits, and I felt the final battle and the main villain at the end of the movie were very underwhelming, but it was still entertaining despite all the problems it has. Although I am rather curious about the extended edition that's apparently coming out later this year, but that's another story to tell. So, before I give my final rating, what does everyone else have to say about Avengers Age of Ultron? Looks like it's getting positive to okay reviews. And so for my final rating of Avengers Age of Ultron, I give it 3.5 out of 5. So, what movie in Phase 3 do you look forward to? And see you later.